record button here. Let's see. Do we see something? Yeah, we see something flashing there. I'm going to give a short intro to you, and then
Okay.
we'll talk. And look, it's just you and I right here on this. So don't feel the formality of like tech people sitting in the corners going, okay, when are they going to start this interview? I'm bored already, which is not the
Okay.
case. All right, here we
Okay.
go.
All right.
Jambo habari yako, which is hello, how are you in Swahili, which is appropriate for today's guest, Egyptian-born Leelah Hazzah, who's the founder of the Lion Guardian program in East Africa, Kenya, and Tanzania. She works with traditional Maasai warriors to protect lions. Leela in 2014 was named one of CNN's top 10 heroes of the year. Leela, Jambo habari yako.
Salama sana na wewe?
Yeah, Mazuri Sana. So it's good to see you again. And right now you're in Nairobi.
I am. I'm in Nairobi. That's why we can connect with good Wi-Fi.
Well, you and I were sort of before we started sort of kidding that you never know in Africa. I have in-laws in South Africa, and there's always a power outage, and then the Wi-Fi goes down. So I think it's pretty amazing, though, considering where you are. And that we're looking at each other across a continent and an ocean.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our infrastructure here, our technology infrastructure in Kenya is pretty remarkable, actually. I'm very fortunate to live in an African country where we have 3D printing and we have, just amazing fiber wire to get fast internet and 5G or 4G. And it's pretty amazing what we can have out here.
So before we get to your Lion Guardian program, which has really been a model for so many people, you're originally born in Africa, Egypt, but how does an Egyptian girl fall in love with lions and end up being their guardians?
Well, I was actually born in Washington, D.C., but I think that's often gets confused because I've spent a lot of time traveling between Egypt and the U.S., and both of my parents are Egyptian. So, blood fully Egyptian. We go all the way back to Nefertiti, my family, and our bloodline, which is pretty cool. But I think since I could walk, I was deeply in love with large mammals. Well, really all animals. I do love reptiles. I love everything that really kind of moves. But I had this infatuation with lions and elephants and just kind of these magical animals. And I used to just hear stories about them all the time when I would go to Egypt and my family, because we used to have lions in Egypt before they were extirpated and killed off. And so I used to hear all these stories. And when I first arrived in Tanzania in 99, and I saw my first elephant, I was just blown away. It was like I knew I was at home. I knew this was it. This is what I had to do. And then I saw my first lion pride chasing hyenas, and I was like, oh my God, could life get any better than this?
You've just sold African safaris. I think that that you probably know the old saying, once the dust of Africa gets on your boots, you'll always return. And
Mm.
I have to agree. I mean, there's something about seeing the specter of animals doing their thing like they have done for thousands and thousands of years before. You mentioned lions in Egypt. I guess this would have been the Barbary lion, which is now extinct. And that was sometime. When did those go extinct? In the 20s, turn of the last century? I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. We don't really know. But yeah, 30s, 40s, it could even have been the 40s. We don't know. But they just started disappearing pretty quickly from that area. And just in Africa, we probably have 15, 20,000 lions left. That we don't have very many. And I think oftentimes people get so concerned about elephants and rhinos, but there are far more rhinos than there are lions left. And people are just shocked to realize that. But I think that as lion conservationists and scientists, we've done a very poor job at messaging what's happening to lions. And so we are working on that and trying to get better so people are aware that, in 10 years, we may not have lions left if we don't do something, dramatic to change the situation.
Well, you're in Kenya, and the flag of it, for people who can't picture it in their head, is black, red, green, with a big Maasai shield on it. And at least what I was taught, and I've visited that area many times, is that a rite of passage for a young Maasai warrior was to actually go with a spear and kill a lion. And so you've now you work with the Maasai people, and you've sort of turned that thinking around. How did that happen?
Oh, that's a big question.
It is a big one.
uh,
That's the essence of that. I
it's
will, but before you even answer that, I'm going to give you a compliment. I was talking to a good friend of yours yesterday,
Mhm.
historian Milbury Polk, and she said one of the things I love best about Leela, and she loves a lot of things about you. She said she's one of the most inclusive people culturally that she knows. And she said so much of your success in East Africa has been that genuine in your DNA inclusiveness, and that would extend over to the Maasai communities.
Well, I love Milbury. She's been an absolute mentor for me, and I, yeah, I feel very lucky to have her in my life. But it's funny you say that because I was having a meeting with a bunch of women that I run. I work on another organization called Women for the Environment Africa, which we can talk about later. But we were having this big meeting, and I was like, "Oh, and we can bring this person in. We can bring this person." So they have a joke now. They say Leela has an inclusive disorder, right? And it's like,
That's a good
I'm
one to
like, oh,
have.
I'm like, it's better than having an exclusion disorder, right? I mean, it's really much better. But I do feel that there is space for everyone's voice, and particularly in the environmental movement, because we don't have time, right? And I think that we need to get away from, oh, this person doesn't have this education, or they're too young, or they're the wrong race, or they're the wrong gender, because we just don't have the time. We need everyone to pull up their sleeves and get involved. And I think, and I learned that working with Maasai. I think, I came in, I was in my late 20s, and I had a lot of experience working at this point, working with large mammals, which I kind of said how much I love them. And by then, I had been working with elephants and started working with lions. But the problem, we weren't conserving lions by following lions around and getting to understand their behavior, or how far they were traveling every day and what they were eating. That wasn't really helping lions. At this time, lions were being absolutely slaughtered. 50, 60 lions killed a year in a small area. Where we had such a dwindling population, we needed to understand why they were being killed, what was triggering that killing. And so I ended up living in the Maasai community, and wow, I learned so much. It was probably one of the most important times in my life for like in terms of learning. And I mean, I have a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD, and I can tell you that I can put all those books down and say really my biggest learning came from living in the community, because of that. The traditional knowledge about the environment that the Maasai have, they have such a great understanding of how ecosystems function, and how important certain trees are, and grasses and insects, and just kind of the holistic picture of how things function. And so it was just like the greatest school ever. And I think that's really helped me understand the system of how Maasai and the environment and lions all interact, and how we can find a balance, because it's about a balance. It's not let's stop all lion killing, or let's turn this into something else. It's what is that balance? And I think indigenous communities know what that balance is, and sometimes people don't listen so much because they might not look the way that most people look at a board meeting or something like that.
So do you remember some of those? Everybody goes into a indigenous situation with a preconceived notion. You can't help it, right? You're conditioned from
Hmm.
what you have heard. What was the biggest aha moment or thought or development in your process of working with those people?
There's just so many, right? I mean, it was really interesting. So there was an elder. I remember it took me a long time for the community to trust me, for sure, because they were not used to people coming from outside living in the community. So building up that trust took a while, and I spent a lot of time just listening, asking a few questions, but really just listening and learning. And there was one elder, because I kept talking about the lions. They were very elusive. I think the Amboseli Savo lions are known to be one of the most elusive lions on the continent. And so I was asking him about that, how difficult it is to find a lion, day or night, you really have to search for them. And he was like, well, it's because they're very clever. They know that, he's like 30 years ago or 40 years ago, when we were warriors, we taught them, we put them in their place because they started eating too many of our livestock. So we know which ones to kill, because if we kill those ones, the other ones will follow. Like, they will recognize that we need to leave alone the cows for now. And so he said what they start doing is they don't walk on soil, because then we can see their tracks. They always move away from the soil or the substrate and move into grass or something that we can't see their tracks on, rocks. And he's like, so the lions here, we've taught them how to stay away from us, right? But not that they killed all of them, and they don't want to kill them all. They've just picked the ones that were the most notorious, livestock killers, for example, and knew that if they picked those, the other ones would follow, and they did, right? And they did. And so then we were never able to find them until later. Now we have this amazing population of lions that they walk on everything, and they're like, you can see my tracks and I don't mind. But it's amazing how quickly lions change their behavior when they're not persecuted anymore. Yeah,
you would have had to have learned Swahili, right? You have to
yeah,
learn Swahili. I
yeah.
mean, they speak English, but to understand their culture. And it's interesting because you're mentioning adaptive behavior of animals. And I've heard that sperm whales attacking whaling ships. I've seen on safaris where leopards or lions will follow behind jeeps because the fumes from the safari jeep mask
Mhm.
their scent from prey. So you do see that kind of interesting adaptive behavior.
It's amazing. We've seen it so much because we've seen a very persecuted lion population to, over 15 years. We have 7 times the number of lions than we had 10, 15 years ago, which is huge. I mean, it's probably one of the only growing lion populations outside of a protected area in Africa right now. Okay, so like that says so much. And it's not just lions, also elephants are doing exceptionally well. So we have this really healthy population. So that means the dynamics change, right? That the way that they interact with communities, they're much bolder now than they were 10, 15 years ago. They'll chase down donkeys right next to a homestead or a boma, compared to before they would stay far, far away. And that's a problem, because with more lions, there's more conflict. So the model that we created that was really purely based on cultural values, and back to your question of how did we change that? Well, we didn't change it. We worked with the communities to come up with something that is completely culturally appropriate. As you said, the warriors in the community, they grew up killing lions for fun. It was a way to prove that you were a man. It showed that you were brave, and it attracted all these lovely ladies towards you. So as any young man, that's what you want to do. But what ended up happening was that culture started shifting anyways. Women started becoming really attracted to men who had jobs, for example, who could buy more cows. Okay,
Hey,
I mean,
they
that's
are in the US as well, just so you know. Your guy
right.
being out of work is not is not sort of a chick magnet, as they say.
Well, exactly. So being out of work and say, I killed a lion, or, hey, I could buy you a pretty new dress. I think that's, that's where things have shifted. So that shift was happening anyways. And so there was a deep desire for these warriors to be part of something, right? Be part of something, because they were left out in this process during the conservation movement, where land was set aside for conservation. For example, tourism came into some of these areas. They were either going with people who were educated, okay, who've gone to tourism school, proper guides, or other conservation organizations were hiring older people, maybe that as game scouts or other employment opportunities, but not really the warriors. And the warriors kept saying, well, our duty in the community, we're the army, we're supposed to protect our community, but no one is giving us that opportunity. And so there was this resentment that was building up within them anyways, and that was triggering some of that lion killing. But they have all of the traditional knowledge to track lions because they were killing them and tracking them very, successfully. And they're fulfilling their traditional role. Um, they can get some money, so they can still like get ladies when they want ladies. They were able to like kind of tick all of these boxes, and they were doing this cool job, right? So this cool factor is very important. I think, especially when you're a young man, you got to do something cool. So we have these telemetry units, these big, boxes where you can track collared lions. And so they used to go into town, it'd be like just a normal town in the middle of Maasai land. And there's no collared lions even slightly close to these towns, but they would stand up on top of the Land Cruiser and start tracking to show all the women, look how cool they are with their backpack, their GPS unit, and their telemetry gear.
There are certain themes, and maybe it's politically not correct these days to talk about one's libido, but man, it is such a driving mechanism for young men. I mean, you can say all you sort of want about things, but when you're a young guy, you want to be noticed. You really want to be noticed, and
Of course.
and I think the idea of putting something new and shiny in their hands. But so, how are you? You're giving them jobs to be these guardians. Now, how are you supporting this?
Yeah, so I mean, and again, with more lions, the way that we linked this to the community when we started, we said, okay, so with more lions, we need more guardians. So it's up to them. They choose to kill some lions, there'd be less jobs, right? So it's really like, and I think that's a really important point, is that we're not saying, this is what it has to be the outcome. They have to make decisions as a community. There might be a problem lion that is really, let's say it's an old male, their teeth are falling apart, they cannot hunt anymore. They might just need to be killed because they only can take goats or something at that point. So if the community makes that decision, that's okay, but they're also losing an opportunity. But as the lion population started steadily growing, we had to add more and more guardians. So we started with 5 guardians. We have over 40 guardians covering 4,000 square kilometers now. A massive area. We've expanded our work to other countries in Africa, which has been really cool. So we're not this small, tiny organization. But one thing we didn't want to become too big, though. We didn't want to franchise and become too big, because then you're not nimble or innovative. You start becoming stuck and you become bureaucratic and you have like 8 vice presidents or whatever. It's just not the way that we want it to function. So we still are trying to keep ourselves between $1 million, $1 million and maybe $1.5 million a year to do what we do. And that's, so it's not a small organization, but it's not too big either. It's still doable. The impact we have is huge for that amount of money. And so, we fundraise like any other NGO. We get out there. We've really connected with individuals that deeply believe in the cause and what we're doing. I think that's really important, is like just finding people that obviously love lions, but also really believe in communities as part of the solution. We're not doing this just for lions. We're not working in Serengeti National Park on purpose, right? We're working in the communities around Serengeti with partners. We're trying to link lion populations between Serengeti and Ngorongoro in Tanzania, because that's what we do. We provide safe passage for lions in community land. And I think that's kind of our bread and butter, and we can do that now with other species. We started sharing knowledge with a group that's working with tigers and leopards in India, which is really cool to be able to do that. The knowledge is it's a knowledge base that can be transferred or applicable in various areas, as long as there are communities willing to sit down and have a discussion of how they can engage.
It sort of goes back to your original theme of being inclusive, or what's your inclusivity?
I have an inclusive disorder.
Well, but I think that if you look at anthropologists around the world, and other big wildlife, or any wildlife, the idea is not so much me going to East Africa and saying, "Hey, wow, I saw these people who wear sandals that the Romans wore," but instead we're allowing people to tell their own story, and I see that as such a model of allowing indigenous local people to sort of have pride in taking care of their own area. and that it is worth something. Now, I know you're extending that type of program into women as well in East Africa. So is that sort of, was that the natural extension of this?
Well, I guess it was for me. I mean, I guess we all go on our own kind of individual journeys, don't we? As we work in a space, being in conservation for 20 plus years, recognizing the slow pace of change was very frustrating. I just cannot keep watching species decline so rapidly, or areas being destroyed, and so I want to do more. It's this idea that we need to do more. Obviously, lions are very important as an apex predator. They're very important in ecosystem. But how do we protect lions and elephants and everything else? How do we like step it up a little bit? And so I got really interested in working around leadership. How do we improve the leadership space in the environmental sector? Because it's pretty destructive. It's ego driven in many ways, which is really such a shame. And there's this mindset of scarcity where people think there's just not enough resources to go around, so people have a great idea and they don't want to share it, and that's just the worst thing we can do, because we have to share. And back to my inclusion disorder, is that like I just think that whenever there is a good idea, we need to get it out there, we need to roll it out, we need to scale it. And so if people are worried about not getting funding, or not getting credit, my name is not on this. It's just, it's not really the right field for that, but it's what has been hampering, I guess, progress. So I started really working on in the leadership space a little bit more, and I started thinking about, well, where are there big gaps in leadership? And one of them is that obviously we all believe that inclusion and diversity is very important at getting innovative ideas, getting bigger ideas, actually rolling things out. Well, when you have less than 5% at the top levels in Africa that are filled by women at those high positions, that's a problem. That's a big problem, because women lead very differently. And I think that's something that people always say, well, is it that you just want women? It's like, no. We need men and women, right? We just don't have like, we have a gender imbalance in leadership, particularly in Africa. So I feel that if we can have more women in those top positions, we will have better outcomes. We will have bigger impact on the environment. So that's something that I started about 3 years ago, working with others, a group called Women for the Environment Africa, or We Africa, and it's been amazing. It's been incredible. We have a program called We Lead, which is a 12-month kind of transformative leadership experience, where this is our first cohort that we're running now. We have women from 12 different countries in Africa at kind of the C-suite level. It's been amazing to be part of that. We bring speakers in from across the globe, and then we have a big scaling component where we want to connect with others, right? Because we think environmentalism is the essence of life. It needs to be connected to everything and everybody. So whether you're an artist or a feminist or a journalist, right? We're all connected to nature. And so there are opportunities to spread the word and spread the message, so we can all start, taking care of something we all deeply believe in and need.
I think you're also now going to cultural shifts, right? Um,
Mhm.
I recall being in the Danenkill Depression of Ethiopia. That's that hottest place in the world. And as a Western male, I go in there and I see women. I mean, honestly, the animals were being kept better than them. And I know that sounds like a very disparaging
Yeah.
mark on that thing. What I find difficult is that in my good intention, as again, a Western thinking person, I could go there and say, hey, this is wrong. But I remember saying that once to a whaling guy in Iceland, and he goes, look, I come to London and New York and I see you choking the planet. Who's wrong, me whaling or you choking the planet? So, that's always such a difficult sort of
Mm.
balance to strike, because you don't want to come in there as and I'll use the Swahili phrase, Mazunga Makuu, the great white chief, and say, this is how it should be done. So how are you striking that balance where you keep the credibility, yet you're not sort of imposing your thoughts on these people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the thing is, Richard, at the end of the day, it's we all want the same thing. So I think we need to maintain that mutual purpose, regardless of who I'm talking to, whatever space I am in. As long as we connect to the mutual thing that we both want, that I'm not imposing anything. We want to get there. We want to get there quickly. And so if there's a recognition that having some inclusion or diversity in the decision making space is important, which I think we would all believe in, then it's fine. Because I'm not pushing anything. I'm just saying, hey, we really need to get there because we're running out of time. Right. And so here's an opportunity. And I think that's a little bit different than saying, let's take off our bras and burn them in and run around. Like, I mean, there is like nothing, that's not it. We just deeply care about nature, and we know women their voices have to be part of that, as are others. Like, I really deeply believe that indigenous communities need to be part of that decision-making space as well, right? And they're often left out because they don't have the education, they don't have the language, the English language or whatever, to be able to communicate at that level. And it's really frustrating because if you look at our team, which, I think we've been quite a very successful organization. I mean, 98% of our team are Maasai from the communities. A lot of them haven't gone to school. We have very senior managers that are making big decisions, that are holding big budgets, and they haven't gone to school. It's not about that, right? It's about a passion, an ability to jump in and know that, oh, there's a challenge, let's run toward it instead of running away from it. That's what it is. It's leadership. Leadership is not what degree do you have or how many languages you speak. And I think people tend to forget that. So it's the profile of a leader. Maybe we need to start thinking about what that looks like.
Leela, we started this conversation saying you were actually born in Washington, and there used to be a movie, Jimmy Stewart, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I almost could see Leela Hazzah Goes to Washington, because everything that you have described is really more than the Band-Aid. It's the culture shift that all leadership needs to see. So listen, thank you for coming on Life's Tough Explorers Are Tougher. You are a hero of the planet, and we need more of you. So shed a little of that over here to the United States.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having me, Richard.